Just a bit of an update on where I'm up to with the Armored Valkyrie. First of all, I have glued some bits onto the main torso structure, so this bottom piece of the cockpit. I am going to need to do some work with that seam. It's pretty rough, so I'll get in there and sand all that up. I've stuck this bottom piece on, which basically holds in the arm hinges and also the back tail section. So now that's all sort of one piece. I think now that's all glued together, I can paint that up as sort of one sub-assembly. Should be pretty straightforward. I might end up masking these poly caps. I just don't know how they'll react to the paint, so I might just mask them just in case. I think they should be fine though. Normally it's just the enamel that's the problem with you know, some of the Bandai plastics. The other thing that I've done is, of course, I have the canopy with the magnet that just now snaps into place. So that's for the fighter mode. For the Batroid mode, I think it is, there's a different canopy piece. Now this one is for some reason bigger, so it is a different piece. It's not a replica of the white one, so it is it's slightly bigger and it's got slightly different lines on it, which is kind of interesting. Then we have the armored piece, and so again that's got a magnet on the other side and that clips in. Fold this out. And so that clips on nicely now. It was just with the pins going into the cockpit, it just didn't seem to line up right, so I think going down the path of using magnets is a lot better. You can still see a little bit of the cockpit on the side, which is a bit annoying, but you know, it was definitely a lot worse with the pins that the kit comes with by default. So that's the cockpit section. Here's the large head, and with all these pieces there's quite a bit of stepping as far as the joins go, so locating pins weren't really that helpful. Now for that center lens bit, and it's really kind of hard to see, but there's actually a line in the middle there, and so I think what I'll end up doing is cutting out a bit of styrene to sort of fit in there so there's no seam, because trying to clean up that seam in there is going to be a bit tricky. So all these pieces that are sort of done in halves, you know, they're going to need quite a bit of work. Again, not quite sure how I'm going to fix up that seam in there. I might end up just cutting out a small piece of pla plate and sticking it in there, so at least it's nice and clean. While we're talking about sort of cutting up pla plate, these are the shoulder armor pieces. And you can see I've already shaved off the fins that are in there. The seam on that was going to be a nightmare to clean up, so what I've done is I've got a strip of 0.25mm thick styrene, and I'm just going to cut them to length to fit in there and just layer them on top of each other so they look like fins. But at least that way it'll be nice and clean, there won't be any sort of seam line in there. I've filled in the gaps on the toes, so I've just put a block of styrene in there and then just filled up the gaps with sprue goo. I've done the same. There's one other sort of gap, and it's on the top of the leg here, and you can sort of see the shadow of the pla plate that I've put in there, but I've also filled that with sprue goo as well, and that's just a tiny sort of cutout that you'll be able to sort of see. So I just wanted to clean them up. If I'm going to all this effort, I might as well sort of clean it all up properly. And going back to the arms, these plates that go on the side of the arms, they have a peg which I'm going to still use. The reason I'm not going with magnets is because the arm holes, they actually hold the gun when in fighter mode. So I think I might just leave them the way they are. But you'll see there's this track that goes down the side and on each side. And what I've done is I've scraped that back because it was going to be a tight fit. And again, I was just worried about the paint scratching. So now at least there's quite a bit of movement in there, but it holds on just fine. It's not falling off, but it just means that when I put these on, it's not going to be scratching the paint. And I'll just quickly show you how I've magnetized the shoulder plates on the arms. So the way this works is that these shoulder plates, they sort of just hold on by magnets. The strength, it's not incredibly strong, but once they're sort of in position, they're not going to move around too much. But you can sort of set them up at the angle that you want, and it'll hold there just fine. So I'll just quickly show you what that looks like. So I've got a couple of magnets positioned at the top of the arm piece there. And for the shoulder armor, just got some more magnets in there. Give you an idea of the cross section of how this works. So it just holds in place like that. And that's enough to hold it. So you don't always have to be drilling holes. You can position magnets, you know, inside the piece, and you can quite often get away with just doing that. Of course, with magnets, you need to be really careful with the polarity. You don't want them sort of being pushed apart. And so I kind of stuffed up a little bit. These shoulder armor pieces, they're actually magnetized with different polarity. So that means that this one will actually push away on one arm and not the other. So they do actually have specific arms they've got to go onto. Just with super gluing things, I'll just quickly show you the process that I use. Now with magnets, you might be able to see this one's still loose in there. So I'll just quickly show you. So normally what I do is I just start out with one, then I put the other one in, glue it in, and then if I need it stronger, I can always add sort of more smaller magnets to it, which is what I've done here. But I'll just quickly show you the process that I use for super gluing. So I use just a little cap. This is actually from a film canister from back in the old days where cameras used to have film. And I don't know what sort of plastic it is, but after a while, when all the super glue sets and everything, you can actually just flex it and it sort of all flakes off. So it's my sort of go-to. But of course, you know, you might just use a bit of cardboard or whatever. Don't ever sort of super glue things straight from the bottle, because that will end in tears. And so what I'll do is get a dab on a toothpick and just put it in, let the super glue sort of let gravity work to let it fall into place where you want it. You don't need a huge amount of super glue, but you need enough to hold it in there so that it's not gonna go anywhere. The magnets aren't gonna let go. All right, now that will set just fine by itself. But what I tend to use is some CA accelerator. So I use the Bob Smith stuff, which the accelerator comes in a pump spray bottle, which I find is very wasteful for a lot of the stuff I want to do. I'll show you. So this is the stuff, Instaset, and it just comes here in this pump bottle, but I just find that's really wasteful. So what I do is I just decant it into a small bottle like this, which has a needle nozzle on it, and you literally just need 1 or 2 drops, and that will be enough to set that super glue instantly. So So it's good stuff. And if you want, you can go in there just with a cotton bud, just to sort of mop up any of the excess accelerator. But that's a process that I use for super gluing things. That's basically it for this update. The next step will be for me to go through and clean all this up, and I think there's a fair bit of work in that, and then priming the pieces. So I might give you an update once I've primed everything and you can see how the pieces cleaned up. I've finished priming the pieces, and boy oh boy was there a lot of cleanup required and a lot of gap filling. So it's still not perfect, but I think it'll do for something at this size, and given that it's an SD, I shouldn't be taking it too seriously. But the cockpit area, there was a sort of an issue with the nose. There was a few gaps there all the way down the side. I think I've cleaned that up reasonably well. Let's get that a bit closer. Yeah, you can probably see where the curves have sort of flattened out a little bit, but you know, it is what it is. Some of the other sort of real problem areas are certainly the arms, and I think I've done a reasonable job on these. So these were done as two halves, and you can sort of see it's a bit rough in sort of the joints in there. It's really hard to get a sanding stick in there. So I sort of got a file and a knife in there and scratched it out, but it's pretty rough. But what I am happy about is I've managed to sort of get rid of that seam of the two halves being clamped together. So you know, I think that's going to look fine. The legs, same deal, two halves stuck together. So just a lot of sort of sanding, filling, priming, sanding, filling, priming until you get sort of a nice flat surface on it. And again, it's in these gaps in here, it's really hard to get a file in there. So they're still a bit rough in those areas, but the rest of it sort of come up pretty well. Now I did come across an issue when I was working out how to basically fix the seams on this while still keeping this front part of the foot separate so I can paint it. So I worked out a way where I basically drilled an extra hole here, and that way I can actually put a pin. This is just a 3mm bit of rod that I've sort of you can push through. Let's see if I can get this to work before I painted it. Alright. So if I get it started, I don't want to go all the way in because I'll never be able to get it out again. Yeah, there we go. So essentially the way this is going to work is that rod is going to push all the way through to the other side and hold it in place. You can see there's no hole on the other side, it's just got a, I guess, a bit of a recess there where it's sort of going to hold it. But that rod will go all the way down flush to this piece so that when you stick the other wing piece on it, this will basically cover up that rod. So that was sort of the way I got around that. I mean, I'm still going to have to mask this piece because this will be metal. This will be sort of the metal colour, but at least this one I can paint separately, and I can actually sort of, you know, put it onto the foot section without having to pull these halves apart. So that was the only way I sort of, I'm sure there's another way. I know some people will do like a C cut where they'll sort of trim, they'll cut out the back of this piece and then just clip it on. I've had mixed results using that method in the past, so this time I'm sort of going through with put a rod all the way through, and I've had great success with that method, so that's what I'll be doing for this one. These parts on the backpack, same deal again, two halves put together, so you're going to have to deal with the seam all the way along the you know, the two halves, and you can see a slight shadow. Yeah, slight shadow of the seam on the end there, but I don't think I'll worry about that. And this panel line's a bit crooked. It didn't line up perfectly, so when I rescribed it, I sort of had a bit of a kink in it. Another thing to contend with is these. It's not two halves you put together, but there is like a mold line that goes down the center that you'll have to sort of file. And it's not so bad with these particular, you know, this front side, but on the back there's these two blocks, and again it's just really hard to sort of get a file or a sanding, you know, any kind of sanding implement in that gap there. So that's sort of problematic. So even though that's, you know, came off the sprue as one piece, there's still mold lines to deal with. These shoulder armor pieces, the biggest issue with these ones being two halves is the vent fins in there. So I wasn't even going to bother try cleaning them up. What I've done is just used 1/2 mil styrene sheet, cut it thin strip and cut it down to size and just layered it up in there. And I've done that for both of them. So that gives just a lot tidier result rather than trying to clean up the seam that goes through the middle. They're not perfect, but they're a lot better than what I could have done if I was trying to, yeah, clean up the two halves. Both of the canopy pieces, because they originally had pins or pegs underneath them, they had sink marks, so that was another thing that I had to sort of clean up, you know, on the top here. So I cleaned that up for both canopy pieces. The toes or extra foot piece have come up reasonably okay, considering I had to fill inside. On this one I can't actually tell which one I did now. I think it was this side. It's just a little bit of dust or something there that I could probably sand away. But yeah, filling those, you know, worked okay. Good amount of sanding. So I've basically got everything primed, and the next step is to obviously start the painting. So I've chosen a couple of colours so far. I'm sort of not really decided on everything just yet, but for the white I'm going to use an off-white, and this is the Boeing grey, so it's a warm white, almost like a cream. And the reason I'm choosing that, even though it doesn't sort of stipulate that in these instructions, I've had a look at, this is from another kit. But which one? This one. Here we go. This one they've sort of done as, yeah, it's like a cream colour almost, you know. So I'm going to go down that path. When you look at it, you're probably not going to notice. It's probably just going to look white. But I think the fact that it's got a little bit of warmth to it will distinguish it from the others when I paint them, you know, just straight white. For the red, because there are a number of red elements, there's the chest piece and a whole lot of details on the armour and also these stripes. So for that I'll be using this Royal Australian Air Force red from SMS Paints. And for the armour itself, it's a purpley blue, but I think I'll probably end up just going with straight SMS blue. This stuff, when it dries, it's got a matte coat over it. It's going to be pretty close. It's probably not going to have, you know, it's not going to be as purple, but that's not going to bother me that much, I don't think. So as far as the strategy for painting goes, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be painting the red first. So wherever there's sort of red stripes or anything like that, I'll be painting that over the grey primer. And then I'll be masking all those red areas off. And then painting white, or in this case blue, over the top. Now the reason I'm doing it in that order is because if I have any white sort of bleed under the masking, it's not so much of an issue. It's easy to sort of touch up with the red rather than going the other way, where if I sort of mask off all the areas, paint red over the white, if that red seeps under the masking, it's a bit harder to touch up. So I'll be doing the red first, then masking it, painting the white, With the blue areas, I'll probably do it the other way around. I just find it easier if you, you do the darker colour first, mask that, and then do the lighter colour over the top. So anyway, we'll see. It could turn out all pear-shaped. I will be painting the canopy black, and then I'm going to try something where I'm not going to go with this sort of metallic blue look they've done here. I'm going to try something else, so we'll see how that goes. If not, I'll just go with straight black and make sure it's high gloss. I won't be using any of the stickers that come in the kit, so there's a couple of things that need to be aware of. There's the number here on the chest, so for that I'll be using a water slide decal, and this is just from a Gundam set of decals. I think these are just the white base ones. So yeah, I've just measured the size of the one there, and it's close. It's not the same typeface, but it doesn't actually matter that much, I don't think. The other thing is the little logo, the little triangle logo. I've shot it on here. So this little one here, I think the UN Spacey logo or whatever it is. I haven't got any decals that are the right size of that one, so I'm probably going to have to paint it. And it's going to be fiddly. However, one thing I really like about this kit is that they've done panel lines around everything. So you can see the UN Spacey logo there, which means that when I paint that red, I'll be able to mask it off using masking tape and using the panel lines as a guide for cutting the masking tape, and then do the white over the top. So I think I should be able to paint it with the airbrush. If not, I'm not quite sure, whether I'm going to be able to hand paint it or whether I do have to go and end up using the stickers just for those. I'd prefer not to, but if I have to get it to look okay, then that's what I'll be doing. I think I will finish this particular video here. The next video I should show some progress on the red gone down, and me doing some masking over the top of that. So till then, take care, and I'll catch you later.